Folks, 2017 is nearly over, so it is that time of year to share my favourite books from the past 12 months. These are in no particular order, so without further ado, here is the first one, The Beginning of the World in the Middle of the Night by Jen Campbell. And if you've been watching my channel, it will be of no surprise that this is on the list. This is probably my new favourite collection of short stories ever. If you like stories that are a bit whimsical but also quite dark in places and have fairy tale elements, then I would highly recommend this. And also, if you enjoy Jen's channel, you are almost guaranteed to enjoy this because there is so much of Jen's wonderful person in this. The second book is Assassin's Fate by Robin Hobb. Now, I won't recommend this to you if you haven't read any of Robin Hobb's other books. In fact, if you haven't read all of Robin Hobb's other books, you really do have to have read all of her other stuff to enjoy this and to even understand what's going on. But I got into Robin Hobb's books a couple of years ago and just binge read them, and of course this one wasn't out yet, so when it did come out I was so excited and quite nervous as well, because she has a tendency to do horrible things to her characters. But this didn't disappoint. It was joyful, it was just absolutely devastating, but yeah, I can't recommend her stuff enough, and I would start either at the very beginning with Assassin's Apprentice or with the live ship books, and The Ship of Magic is the first of those. They are wonderfully written, very well paced, and she has a wonderful sense of narrative, and her characters are just amazing, and I feel like they are my fictional friends. Then we have Stay With Me by Ayobami Adebayo, and this is a debut novel which was shortlisted for the Bailey's list, and my goodness, it's amazing. I was quite disappointed actually, not surprised, but a bit disappointed that this didn't win the Bailey's Prize, because I think it would have been very deserving of it. It's certainly deserving to be on the shortlist. And the fact that this is a debut novel just makes it all the more extraordinary, and I can't wait to see what she brings out next. This is about a woman and her husband. Her husband remarries or takes a second wife, and it's about the repercussions of that. A lot to do with motherhood and the emotions that surround motherhood. But what is most amazing about this is you think you know what's going on, and then she'll drop another bombshell and you'll be completely thrown, and everything that you've read up to that point gets called into question. And I think that's a really clever thing for an author to be able to do. Then I finally read Aristotle and Dante Discover the Secrets of the Universe, and I listened to this as an audiobook, which I absolutely wholeheartedly recommend you do, because even if you've read the book, the narration is so good. It's narrated by Lin-Manuel Miranda of Hamilton fame, so there's no surprise that it is an absolute masterpiece. But the combination of how great the book is with this narration, I mean, I don't think you could ask for much more in an audiobook. And I wasn't sure that I was going to enjoy this. I don't generally read a lot of YA, but this one definitely lived up to the hype, and I really liked the way it was written, the characterization, the coming of age aspect of it. It's about two boys who have unusual names, and they have a lot more than that in common. Then there's another audiobook which is also narrated by Lin-Manuel Miranda, and this is also a coming of age story, but quite different in many ways. It's more grown-up coming of age story. It's The Brief and Wondrous Life of Oscar Wilde, which is by Junot Diaz, and this again was fantastic, which is why it has made this list. It's one that I'm sure I will reread at some point as well. It was so good. Likewise with probably everything on this list. This is again a coming of age story, and it is about a boy called Oscar and the strange and wonderful and sometimes quite boring life that he leads. He's a bit of a geek, a bit of an outcast, but the way that Junot Diaz writes makes it all seem very grand, and like there's a much bigger plan going on, and the way that the narration works as well really gives you that sense. So I was really glad that I finally got around to reading that this year. Then we had Three Daughters of Eve by Elif Shafak, and this is the second book of hers that I read, and I didn't think that much of the other one that I'd read. I think it was The Architect's Apprentice. I enjoyed it, but I didn't love it. This one I absolutely loved, partly because it is a campus novel, and I love books that are set at universities, and that's actually the thing that I most loved about this is the way that the university seemed, and particularly the tutorials and classes that she had at Oxford, the way that they were written was so engaging and made me feel like I was in that classroom. And those are the kinds of tutorials that I really wanted to have with my own university experience, and were quite rare in many ways. They did happen, but yeah, this really put me back into that kind of world. So it's about a Turkish housewife who is looking back on her time at Oxford, and she was mixed up in some kind of scandal back in her university days with one of her very charismatic professors, and we don't know quite how she was involved, and that's what is revealed over the course of the novel. So if you like campus novels, highly recommend this one. Another book that was shortlisted and actually won the Bailey's Prize was The Power by Naomi Alderman, which I really enjoyed as well. Maybe not quite as much as Stay With Me, but I found it to be a very immersive reading experience, or in this case, listening experience, because I did listen to the audiobook. The narration is fantastic, but the concept of this is that pretty much overnight, women develop the ability to create electricity with their hands. And of course what happens is the gender dynamic is completely flipped almost overnight, because women are suddenly the stronger sex. And so it is all about the aftermath of that, and it follows various different characters through this process of a change of the world order. And I really liked reading the different perspectives on this same global event. So the final 3 books that I have here are all in physical format, and the first one is this one here, If We Were Villains by M.L. Rio. I actually read this as an advanced proof copy, which was sent to me by the publisher, and I was so excited when they emailed me with the synopsis of this book. And I said, oh yes, of course I would love to read it, because it is very closely compared to The Secret History, which of course does make one a little bit nervous when a book is compared directly with one of your favourite books of all time. But this really lived up to it. It is different to The Secret History, but it has a lot in common, and I think the elements that it has in common were what made it great, and then also the things that made it different. Because if it had been too much like The Secret History, I don't think I would have enjoyed it, but it did feel like its own story. So it's set at a university, and instead of classic students, as you have in The Secret History, you've got a group of drama students, and they are studying Shakespeare. I studied English literature at university, so I found a lot of similarities between what they were studying and what I studied, which was really fun as well. It is a bit pretentious in places, but just the right amount of pretentiousness, I think. It's kind of a literary crime thriller, that's how I would describe it. And we find out at the beginning that one of these characters has been imprisoned for the murder of one of their friends, but there is a level of suspicion about if he actually did it. So then we go back and we hear the story from his point of view, and we find out what really happened all those years ago. So if you like The Secret History, I would definitely recommend this. Also, if you like crime thrillers, I would recommend this as something that is probably a little bit different, but is definitely a page turner. And the writing in this is beautiful as well. It has that perfect balance of, well, that perfect, it's not a balance, it's both the prose and the plot are just top notch. And you have this dilemma where I wanted to keep reading faster and faster to find out what was happening, but at the same time I wanted to savor every moment of it and every sentence, because it is that beautifully written. And speaking of books that are beautifully written, I don't think you can get much more beautiful prose than in Call Me By Your Name by Andre Ackerman. This has recently been made into a film that I haven't seen yet, but I'm dying to see. But the thing that really makes this is the writing, the prose style, and also the fact that it is all going on inside this young adolescent's head. It is a love story between 2 men, a younger one who's the narrator and an older man. It's set in the Italian Riviera, so you have that lovely sort of languid, almost kind of soporific effect of the heat, and that comes across in the prose. And I'm not sure how he does it, but I love books that manage to do this. Hot Milk by Deborah Levy is another one that manages to get that same kind of feeling to it. which I absolutely loved. So yeah, I can't recommend this enough as an LGBT love story, as a beautifully written novel, and it's definitely one that I will be rereading. And the final book we have here is The Book of Dust, which comes in this lovely slipcase. This is the special edition, and it's signed by Philip Pullman as well, which is super exciting. I've already talked about this recently, so I won't go into too much detail, but just wonderful to be back in that world of His Dark Materials. It has Pullman's beautiful prose style, as always, and being back in that world was just a delight, and I've been anticipating this book for so long, and I can't wait for the next one to come out. Yeah, I'm already dying to have the next one in my hands, because it being a part of a trilogy, it doesn't have a sort of nice round ending to it. Anyway, those were the books that I read in 2017 and absolutely loved and would recommend to all of you. Let me know down in the comments what your favourite books of 2017 were. I always love seeing these videos at the end of each year and getting recommendations for what I should read in the following year. So as always, thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for watching in 2017, and I will see you again in 2018. Bye.